So let's go through a couple definitions so I'm sure that we're on the same page. First is 3D animation. What is 3D animation? I'm sure you must have heard about this at some point, especially if you're new to the space, but you don't know exactly what it means. So you know those Disney cartoons, early Disney cartoons like The Lion King, Cinderella, etc. Those are 2D animations, and D stands for dimension. So 2 dimensions, X and Y. Let's say you are drawing a graph. You have the X and the Y axis, and then there is no depth. It's just a flat plane. So when you're animating and it has flat shapes like circles, squares, triangles, just flat shapes, that is 2D animation. But when you add depth to it, it becomes 3D animation. So instead of working with circles, you're now working with spheres. Instead of working with squares, you're now working with cubes. Instead of working with triangles, you're now working with pyramids. So basically, you're taking these simple 2D shapes and giving them depth. So that's what 3D is. Now, 3D animation is basically taking these shapes, cubes, spheres, 3D shapes that have volume, and then changing the location, the position wherever they are, changing the rotation, changing the scale. So location, rotation, and scale are the 3 attributes that you'll be messing with most of your animation. Location is basically where is this thing in space. So if I have this mouse, for example, and the mouse is at this point, and then after a while it gets to this point, it has changed location. And also if I have the mouse like this and then I rotate it like this, I have changed the rotation. So I'm affecting the rotation right now as I'm turning it on different angles. Then when I'm moving it from side to side, I'm affecting the location. And then for scale is basically the size of things. So imagine blowing into a balloon, you are increasing the scale. So that's basically the top 3 fundamental attributes that you'll be changing most of the time when you're animating. Now, CGI. CGI stands for computer generated imagery. I'm sure you have heard of this at some point, probably in the behind the scenes of movies or talking about some ads. Basically, any kind of imagery that was created with a visual software on a computer is CGI, computer generated imagery. So if it's the computer that helps you create this image, that helps you generate this image through a software, through a program, that is considered as CGI. So when you see the dragon in Game of Thrones, the dragon is not real. It was never there in the actual scene. So they put the dragon, they created it with a 3D software and they put it into the scene. That is CGI. If you film an empty pool without water in it and then you put some fluid simulation and you make the water move around, the fluid you put into the pool is CGI. So when you're watching back footage and you see buildings, you see things in the background, those things are real. You see actual actors in the footage, those things are real. But when you see things that are there now that wasn't there when the video was shot, you can consider those things CGI, especially if they were designed in 3D and rendered specifically for that scene. Now, VFX. VFX stands for visual effects. It's like a blanket term. It's a parent term. And since the X stands for effect, it's basically where you manipulate imagery to create things that were not actually there when you actually shot it, when you shot the actual real life background video. So a lot of things can be VFX, not just CGI. So when people say CGI, they're usually referring to that 3D object that you dropped into the scene. But a lot of other things that might not be 3D objects can also be considered as VFX, but not CGI. So I just want you to know the difference. VFX is a blanket term. So when you take a video in Premiere Pro and then you cut yourself out and duplicate yourself, that is something simple. You just did it to a 2D video, but then that is visual effects since it's a visual effect. But when you take the 3D model of a wristwatch, for example, and then you put it in that video, then you have added CGI to it. So VFX is all encompassing. When you add smoke to the scene, that's VFX. When you make the camera shake, basically when you do things that were not actually there when you were actually filming to enhance the full effect of the video you just recorded. And now Blender. Blender is a free 3D software that is super powerful, and I'm so excited to be taking you through Blender, especially if you're an absolute beginner, showing you around the interface and we're getting through all of that. So a 3D software is basically a program, a computer program, a tool used to create 3D. So you're either designing 3D objects, which is called modeling, or you are texturing it. So you're adding color to it, making it shiny, making it rough, making it bumpy, all of that. That's texturing. And also you can be animating things. You can be moving things around. You can be making the ball bounce. You can be making a character jump. You can be making a phone or a wristwatch rotate around and flip. All that is animation. All these are done inside of a 3D software. And Blender is the 3D software we'll be using in this entire course because it is free and it is powerful. It is an open source software, so you can easily just go on blender.org. We'll go through all of that in a minute.